Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. I heard him say it, low and bitter, just loud enough to be cruel, not loud enough to be called out. She's just trucker trash. It was my father's voice, slithering out from behind his bourbon glass. He thought no one would catch it, thought the music and laughter in that cheap-ass community gym would drown it out. But Dale heard it. And so did I. The whole room had been humming with that Midwest small-town energy. Bad lighting, kids running around in cowboy boots, crockpots on the folding tables. I'd just tossed my bouquet into a circle of drunk cousins when I saw Dale stiffen in his seat, his eyes cut toward my dad, then back to me. My stomach dropped. Dale stood up, real calm, but loud enough that it sliced through the music like a blade. That trash has seen more highways than you've seen daylight, sir. The DJ froze with one hand on the speaker. My cousin Jenny's beer hit the floor. The whole place went dead silent. My dad choked mid-sip, bourbon spraying out as he coughed and slapped at the wet stain on his dress shirt. He didn't say a word. Couldn't. His mouth opened, then shut again like a fish gasping on a dock. I didn't move. I didn't need to. Dale had said it all. Every damn word I'd swallowed for the last 15 years, all dropped in front of my friends, family, and that whole backwards town. Quick note, before we go any further, share which city or country you're watching from. Dad looked around like he was waiting for someone to back him up. No one did. Even Mom just stared at the floor, her lips pressed so tight they disappeared. I stood next to Dale, the white lace of my dress brushing the scuffed basketball court. And for the first time in my life, my father had no comeback. Something shifted in me right then. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stood taller. Because Dale wasn't defending me. He was honoring me, loudly, publicly, and my dad's silence said everything I needed to hear. I turned, took Dale's hand, and walked off the floor. I sat on our front porch the next morning, coffee in hand, bare feet on the cool wood. Oak Street was dead quiet except for some birds going at it in the trees and a lawnmower a few blocks over. My wedding dress was still balled up in the laundry room, stained with barbecue sauce and someone's beer. I wasn't hungover, I was just raw. I kept hearing my dad's voice over and over. She's just trucker trash. It wasn't new. Hell, he'd been throwing that same line at me since I was 22 when I told him I was signing on with Western Freight. I still remember him standing at the back of his tire shop, grease up to his elbows, just shaking his head. Only dropouts and drunks drive rigs, he said. You want to be like those toothless freaks parked outside the diner? Go ahead, I'd walked out. Didn't say a word. Just drove straight to the terminal in Joplin and climbed into the ugliest blue Kenworth I'd ever seen. I was scared shitless. That first solo haul took me through Montana in late November. I remember gripping the wheel like it would disappear if I let go. Everything felt too big. The mountains, the silence, the damn sky. But I made it. Didn't scratch the trailer once. Slept in the bunk with 3 blankets and a hunting knife tucked by my side like a fool, and that's where I met Dale. He was fueling up next to me outside Billings, freight out of Amarillo, hauling aluminum reels, tall, broad-shouldered, and too polite for his own good. Said ma'am like he meant it. We didn't talk long, just a few minutes before I pulled back onto the highway. 2 days later, I saw his rig again. It was sideways in a snowbank off I-90. The trailer was jackknifed, hazards blinking through a whiteout, and one side of the cab was crushed in from the barrier. I didn't think. I just pulled over. Climbed out, fought the wind, slipped twice before I got the door open. Dale was slumped over, conscious but bleeding from the forehead. You awake? I yelled. Yeah, he mumbled. Brakes locked. Lost it, I got him out through the passenger side and dragged him to my truck, wrapped his head with a towel and turned the heat all the way up. He was lucky to be alive. We sat there in the cab for hours waiting on recovery crews. He kept thanking me. You saved my ass, he said. Could have froze or bled out in there. Don't be dramatic, I said. You're just heavy and annoying. He laughed, and that was the start of it. Before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? We didn't fall in love right away. I mean, it wasn't a damn movie. But we kept running into each other. Way stations, truck stops, rest areas out west. He'd always make a point to check on me. If I looked tired, he'd offer coffee. If my boots were soaked, he'd bring fresh socks from his cab. I didn't ask for any of it, but I noticed. One night in Wyoming, we were parked side by side at a rest stop outside Cheyenne. He knocked on my door and handed me a mug. No words, just coffee and that dumb, crooked smile. Thanks, I said. He leaned on the side of my truck. You ever think about quitting? All the time. Then why don't you? I shrugged. Because I'm not done yet. He nodded like he got it, and I think he did. I heard the screen door creak behind me. Dale stepped out barefoot, hair still a mess, holding his own cup. He sat down next to me, quiet, just sipped and stared at the street. Hell of a night, he muttered. Yeah. You okay? Not really, I said. But I'm here. He reached over and rested his hand on my leg. I stared out at the neighbor's overgrown lawn, took a long drink, then stood up. Let's get the oil changed on the rigs, I said. Parade or not, we got miles to run. Dale fired up the flat top while I dumped the catfish into the breading tubs. The VFW hall smelled like fryer grease, cheap coleslaw, and old trophies. It was a Thursday night, about 3 months before the wedding, and they were short on volunteers. So we'd signed up to work the back corner station at the annual fish fry fundraiser. Me on the batter, Dale on the fryer, both of us sweating in old aprons that smelled like cigarette smoke and fryer oil. Keep it moving, babe, Dale said, tapping the wire basket. Fish don't fry themselves. I rolled my eyes and shoved another batch toward him. You want speed or quality? Both. We're a classy operation. We were halfway through the second tray when I noticed the tall guy with the gray ponytail watching us from the corner near the keg. He had on a faded Marine Corps cap, one arm folded across his chest, the other holding a styrofoam cup. Didn't say much, just nodded when I looked his way. Who's that? I asked Dale. That's Big Ron, he said. Vietnam vet. Don't worry, he don't talk unless it matters. I kept my eyes on the fish, but when the line slowed, Big Ron came over, looked me square in the face. You the one runs freight out of Tulsa? I wiped my hands on a rag. Yup. You solo? Most of the time. He gave a tight nod. Respect, he said, then walked off. That was it. One word. But I felt it in my chest like a punch. Real respect doesn't need a damn speech. Quick break. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. Later that night, Dale and I were hosing down the fry station out back. He was leaning on the wall, drinking from a warm soda, watching the parking lot clear out. He looked over and said, You remember that night in Wyoming? Which part? I asked. The freezing cold or the fact that you almost bled out in your own cab? He smiled. The part where you dragged my ass through the snow and then pretended it was no big deal. I shrugged. You were blocking the exit ramp. It was annoying. He laughed, but he didn't let it drop. I think about it more than you know, he said. I tell that story sometimes. Why? Because it's the night everything changed. I didn't know what to say to that. I'd always treated it like just another day on the road, just something you do. Somebody's in trouble, you stop. That's the rule. But for Dale, it wasn't just about the wreck. It was about the way I handled it. No panic, no drama. Just got it done. I think that's when he started seeing me different. Not just as another driver, not just as a woman. He leaned on the wall next to me, arms folded, eyes locked in. You didn't flinch, he said. Most people freeze when things go sideways. You didn't? I stared down at the wet pavement. The grease was still swirling in the runoff. You remember everything, don't you? I asked. Only the important stuff. Inside, Big Ron was helping a couple of the older guys stack chairs. I watched him for a second, quiet, steady, moving like he'd done it 1,000 times. Dale followed my gaze. You earned his nod, he said. Didn't feel like much. You don't get that kind of nod unless you've hauled weight. We finished packing up, wiped the counters, unplugged the fryer. By the time we stepped outside, the parking lot was empty except for Big Ron's truck and ours. He nodded again when we passed, just once. I nodded back and climbed into the cab. The folding chairs scraped like nails against the tile as folks sat down. Church basement smelled like green beans, Lysol, and whatever perfume my Aunt Connie always poured on like lighter fluid. Paper plates, plastic forks, and half-warm casseroles lined the tables. Rehearsal dinner, small-town style. Dale wore his old Army unit jacket. Didn't even think twice about it. It was just a bit cold down there, and the thing still fit him like a glove. I liked the way it looked on him. Faded patches, collar frayed, sleeves pushed up to his forearms. It wasn't flashy, just honest. Then my dad opened his mouth. Nice costume, he said, loud enough to cut through the prayer Aunt Connie had just finished. You boys gonna play soldier now? The joke landed like a sack of bricks. No laughter, just the sound of someone setting down a fork a little too hard. I didn't move, didn't look at him. I felt Dale's hand slide under the table. Find mine. He gave it a quick squeeze. That was all he needed to say. Dad didn't even blink. He just kept eating his potato salad like nothing had happened. He knew what he said. He wanted it to sting. Big Ron was 2 chairs down, peeling his chicken apart with his fingers. He set the meat down slow, wiped his hands, and turned his head. Some men can't hear past their own echo, he said. That was it. Short, measured. But the way he said it, firm, like a warning, turned every head in the room. Before we go on, tell us where you're listening from tonight. Even my mom looked up from her green beans, eyes going straight to her lap. She didn't defend Dad, didn't even try. She just went quiet and picked at her food like the rest of us. I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste blood. If I opened my mouth, I knew it wouldn't be pretty. I'd been holding back for years. Every truck stop insult, every jab about my job, every sideways comment about Dale, it was all sitting in my throat, begging to come out. But not here. Not with the pastor watching, not with Big Ron watching, so I didn't say a word. Dale rubbed his thumb along my knuckle once, then went right back to his plate like he hadn't been disrespected in front of 50 people and a tray of dinner rolls. That's something about Dale. He doesn't fight for show, doesn't explode. He lets it build, holds it until it counts. The rest of the meal dragged. Conversations got stiff, jokes didn't land. My cousin Brandon tried to lighten things up by talking about fishing, but even he gave up halfway through a story about snagging his own waiters. Nobody was listening. The only sound I kept hearing was my dad's fork scraping the plate. Slow, metal on paper, like a goddamn shovel in gravel. At the end of the night, people helped fold up chairs and stack trays. Nobody made eye contact. Nobody said anything about the costume comment, except Big Ron. He stepped beside me as we cleaned up and handed me a stack of leftover napkins. Hold the line, he said. I nodded, jaw tight, and took the stack from him. The air in Dad's tire shop always smelled like burnt rubber and stale coffee. Nothing ever changed in there. Same rusted Coke machine, same cracked concrete floor, same calendar of girls in bikinis hanging behind the register, even though it was already September and still stuck on June. He was at the counter when I walked in, counting receipts and pretending not to see me. I waited. He didn't say a word, just flipped through the slips like I wasn't standing 5 feet from him. I heard you're pissed, I said. He looked up, eyes flat. Your husband tried to humiliate me. I leaned against the counter. Did he? You tell me, he said. You let him stand there and talk to me like that in front of the whole damn town? I didn't answer. Just let the silence sit like a weight between us. He didn't know what to do with that. He was used to me filling the space, smoothing things over. Not anymore. You could have said something, he muttered, slapping the receipts into a drawer. You let that happen. I looked him dead in the eye. No. I let it land. He stared for a beat, then turned his back and started wiping off the coffee pot like that conversation was over. But it wasn't. Not for me. Quick break. Before we go on, where are you listening from? By the time I got home, Mom had already called. Twice. Left a voicemail that sounded like she was rehearsing for a church ladies' meeting. Sweetie, your dad's upset. He didn't mean it like it sounded. You know how he is. He runs his mouth, but he still loves you. I didn't call her back. 2 days later, Dale came in from the garage with grease on his shirt and a look in his eye. I invited your dad to lunch, he said. I blinked. Why? Because I'm not here to make this worse. You think I enjoy the drama? I wanted to talk like men. Did he say yes? Dale shook his head. Didn't answer. Then sent a text. Can't make it? That's it. I knew what that meant. Not just can't. Wouldn't. Wouldn't look Dale in the face. Wouldn't face himself either. Later that week, my phone rang while I was topping off the DEF in my rig. Unknown number. I almost let it go, but something told me to answer. Hello? Is this Sherry? A familiar voice asked. Yeah, who's this? It's Big Ron. I'm calling on behalf of the VFW board. Listen, we took a vote. We want you to be the Grand Marshal for Founders Day. I almost dropped the jug. You serious? Dead. It was unanimous. We want to honor you, your work, your record, what you did for Dale. Folks remember that kind of thing. I laughed once, not because it was funny, because it caught me off guard like a slap. I'm not Grand Marshal material, I said. Says who? Says me. I ain't looking to be a spectacle he didn't push. Just said, think on it. You earned it, but I didn't have to think. I said no before I hung up because being seen meant being talked about, and this town loved to talk. By the end of the week, the whispers had already started. She turned it down? Why would she say no? Is it true what happened at the wedding? Dale heard some of it from his buddy Tyler, who stocks shelves at the IGA. You know they're making it worse by the day, right? Tyler said. Not saying anything is letting your old man win. Dale repeated that part to me. I didn't respond, but I heard it. It stuck. I was halfway through unloading the truck that night when my phone buzzed again. Big Ron, one-word text. Shame. That's all it said. Just that. But it hit harder than anything Dad had thrown at me. I locked the trailer, climbed up into the cab, and slammed the door harder than I meant to. I sat in the cab of my rig for damn near 15 minutes after that message from Big Ron. The word just hung there, shame, like diesel smoke you couldn't wave away. Next morning, I went into town to grab coffee and a bag of feed for the neighbors' goats, and it felt like every pair of eyes followed me through the parking lot. No one said anything, not at first. But the looks were louder than words. By noon, Dale was already hearing it at the shop. His buddy Tyler walked in, tossed a wrench on the counter, and shook his head. Your father-in-law's making a stink, he said. Told Councilman Hughes you're just trying to play hero. That the nomination was a stunt, I looked up from my clipboard. Seriously? He's calling it a pity vote. Said the town's better off honoring someone with an actual legacy I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The heat rising up my neck said enough. Look, Tyler went on, I ain't one for small-town drama, but I'm telling you straight, if you don't stand up now, he wins. Every time you back down, he fills in the blanks for people. Before we go on, tell us where you're watching or listening from. I walked out back, stood between the garage and the fuel tanks, and lit a cigarette I'd sworn off 2 years ago. The first drag burned like guilt. By the weekend, the whole thing had gone from whispers to full-blown town gossip. My mom called, of course. Sweetie, your father just feels like people are laughing at him. I let her talk. Let her say the usual phrases. He's hurting. He doesn't mean it. Can't you just talk to him? I hung up without saying a word. The next day, I ran into Big Ron at the grocery store. I was pushing a cart full of dog food and paper towels when I spotted him by the cold cuts, arms crossed, one boot propped up on the bottom shelf. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just looked at me. You really turned it down? I don't want the spotlight, I said. Ain't my style. Didn't ask if it was your style. Asked if you said no, I shrugged. What's it matter? Dad's already turned it into a circus. Ron leaned in closer. Listen to me. If you don't show up for this, folks are gonna think you're ashamed of who you are, of what you've done. I'm not, I snapped. Then act like it. He grabbed a pack of bologna and walked off. I stood there, hand on the cart, suddenly aware of how quiet the aisle had gone. That night, I sat on the back steps with a beer in my hand, watching the sun dip behind the trees. Dale came out and sat beside me. We didn't talk. Didn't need to, but I kept hearing Ron's voice in my head. Then act like it. I took a long pull from the bottle, then got up, walked inside, and grabbed the damn number Big Ron had called me from. I called the number that night, just like I said I would. Big Ron picked up after 2 rings and said, "Thought you might." 3 days later, I walked into the town council meeting with my shoulders squared and my stomach tight. The chamber smelled like paper and dust, with those awful gray-blue walls and folding chairs too small for real people. Dale sat to my right. Big Ron sat to my left. I could feel the eyes before we even took our seats. The place was packed. Local news guy with his camera, retirees with coffee mugs, teens in ROTC polos in the back row. I caught sight of my mom near the door, hands clutched in front of her like she was praying already. And then there was my father, front row, arms crossed, chin up like he owned the building. The mayor gave a quick intro, then the council chair cleared her throat. We're here to discuss the nomination of Sherry Miller as this year's Founders Day Grand Marshal. Before she could finish the sentence, Dad stood up. This whole thing's a damn joke, he said. People turned. Founders Day is for folks who built this town, not for some freight-hauling dropout trying to play the hero. You honor her. You make a joke out of the holiday. Silence hit like thunder. I stayed still. Let him say it all. Then the parade organizer stood. Mrs. Helen Crawford, white hair pinned tight, voice like steel. With all due respect, Mr. Miller, she said. We've honored plumbers, farmers, teachers, and folks who ran the library for 30 years. So why not her? Before we go on, tell us where you're watching or listening from. Dad opened his mouth again, but Dale stood up next. He didn't look at my father, just spoke to the room. 5 years ago, in a whiteout outside Cheyenne, my truck flipped on black ice. Cab crushed, bleeding bad. Sherry pulled me out before the ambulance ever got there. She patched my head, got me warm, and kept me awake till help came. Then she just got back in her rig and kept driving. He paused. She saved my life and never bragged about it once. The air tightened. Then Big Ron got up slow, unfolding a paper from his pocket. This is a letter from Darlene Hayes, he said, widow of George Hayes, who died in a wreck off R40. She wrote this to the VFW when she heard Sherry was nominated. He cleared his throat and read, I wasn't there when George took his last breath, but Sherry Miller was. She climbed into a mangled cab and held his hand. She called me from his phone to tell me he wasn't alone. That's something I'll never forget. Ron folded the letter, voice firm now. That's why she deserves it, because when things go bad, she shows up. For a second, the only sound was the flag by the window tapping the frame. Then it started. I second it, said the school bus driver near the back. She helped me last year when my engine gave out with kids on board. She's earned it, said the manager from the grocery store. Helped deliver supplies during the last flood. One by one, people stood. Folks I didn't even think remembered my name. Judge Collins banged the gavel once, calm and even. Sherry, he said, will you accept the honor? My throat was tight, but my voice held steady. Yes, I said, not for me. For the young women watching, who've been told they're too loud, too rough, or not enough of something. This is for them. Applause broke out like a wave. It wasn't wild, just strong, steady. I scanned the front row. Dad stayed seated. Didn't clap, didn't stand, just stared ahead, jaw locked. Didn't matter. I turned toward the council, nodded once, and sat down with Dale's hand firm on my back. The sun beat down on Main Street like it was punishing the pavement for something. I sat in the back of an old red pickup, legs crossed, hands on my lap. My name painted on a wood sign tied to the tailgate. Sherry Miller, Founders Day Grand Marshal. Folks lined the sidewalks with lawn chairs and coolers, kids waving dollar store flags, dogs panting beside their owners. My rig was parked at the far end near the hardware store, cleaned so sharp it looked fresh off the lot. A local MC read from a paper as the truck rolled forward. Over 1.3 million safe miles. Certified hazmat hauler. First on scene at 3 major crash recoveries. This year's Grand Marshal, Sherry Miller. Some clapped, some stood, a few hollered. I kept my chin up and gave the nod, just enough to say I see you, not enough to beg for anything more. Then I saw him, my dad, sitting on the bench by the old war memorial, arms crossed, sunglasses on, legs spread like the damn king of the sidewalk. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared like the parade was a meeting he hadn't agreed to. I felt the heat crawl up my neck, but didn't let it show. Let the truck keep rolling. About halfway down the block, just as we reached the center of the crowd near City Hall, the truck jerked to a stop. The MC's mic squealed once. He tapped it, confused, then backed away. Dale stepped forward and took the mic out of his hand. He didn't look nervous, just calm, like he'd been waiting for this. Folks, he said, I wasn't planning to speak, but I need to say something real. The crowd settled. Even the dogs stopped barking. Quick note, before we go further, let us know where you're tuning in from today. Dale turned, looking out across the crowd, but I knew who he was aiming it at. I'm alive today because of the woman in that truck. Not just alive in the heartbeat sense. I mean alive like standing, breathing, walking this street because she chose to pull over when others drove by. A few murmurs passed. People looked around. I was bleeding out, half buried in snow, and she dragged me out with nothing but grit and a damn blanket. Didn't ask for thanks. Didn't wait for praise. Just said, you're blocking traffic. Laughter rippled. Not loud, just enough to cut the tension. Dale's voice dropped, steady and sharp. Sir, he said, turning toward my dad, she outranks the part of you that can't say you're proud. Silence, heavy and clean, like someone had sucked the air out of the whole block. My throat tightened, but I didn't flinch, just kept my eyes forward. Big Ron stood up from his lawn chair, straight-backed in full VFW dress, and raised a crisp salute. Then another guy stood, then 2 more. Then it was half the block, clapping slow but firm. Judge Collins leaned down next to my dad and said something I couldn't hear. My dad didn't move at first, just sat there stiff, jaw clenched. Then, like a rusted hinge finally breaking loose, he stood up. His hands moved once, awkwardly, like he didn't quite know how to clap, but he did. A few stunted claps, stiff and slow. He didn't smile, didn't wave, but he stood there, shoulders drawn tight, clapping like it cost him something. And maybe it did. I didn't wave back. I just sat up straighter in the bed of that truck as it rolled forward, banners flapping behind me, Dale walking beside it like a bodyguard. Smoke from the grills drifted low over the park, mixing with the smell of burgers, beer, and sunscreen. Kids were darting between picnic tables, red-faced and barefoot, while the town band fumbled through a cover of Sweet Home Alabama over by the gazebo. I was standing near the photo wall, one of those plywood things the church ladies set up every year with black and white snapshots from past founders' days. Old tractors, beauty queens, and vets in dress uniforms. I wasn't really looking at anything, just needed a minute out of the noise. That's when I felt him step up behind me. My dad didn't say hello, didn't touch my shoulder, just stood there like he was reading the same photos. I didn't mean half of it, he muttered. I turned to face him, arms folded. You meant every word, I said. And that's the problem. He didn't argue, just rubbed the back of his neck like the words had landed exactly how they should have. Before we go further, tell us what part of the country or world you're watching from today. I barked too loud, he said finally. Did it so long, I stopped noticing who was hauling weight. I didn't speak. You pulled more than I ever gave you credit for, he said. Damn near ran yourself into the ground to prove something I should have just seen. That's not an apology, I said. That's just you finally realizing I wasn't bluffing. He nodded. I know. Still, it's what I got. I could have said more. I had years' worth of fuel stored up, ready to burn. But I didn't need to unload it all, not now, so I cut it clean. You want to fix this? I said. Start showing up. Blood drive's next Saturday. Church needs help stacking hymnals. Mom could use someone who actually listens for once. You want respect? Earn it. He didn't get defensive, didn't argue like he usually did. Just nodded again, slower this time. I can do that. Good, I said. Start there. Someone called my name from across the field. Dale, probably. I turned and walked away without another word, plate still empty, hands still clean. Later, while Dale flipped burgers for the Legion guys and Big Ron told the same story for the third time about the best fish fry in '97, I saw my dad near the supply tent. Nobody told him to. He was folding chairs, neatly, one at a time. He stacked them straight, then moved on to the trash cans, tying off the bags without a word. No chest puffing, no speech, just doing what needed doing. I watched from a distance, just long enough to know it was real, not performative. That's the thing about people like him. They don't apologize right. They don't say it in a way you can wrap up in a bow. But when the bark's gone and the hands finally get to work, sometimes that's louder than words. He didn't look over, didn't wait for me to notice, didn't need to. I drove home with the windows down, air thick with cut grass and charcoal smoke. Parade dust still clung to my jeans. My arms were sunburned, throat dry, but my chest was lighter than it had been in years. Dale was behind me in his truck, a cooler full of leftovers rattling in the back seat. The old back roads rolled by. Open fields, peeling barns, fence posts leaning like tired men. I let the wind slap my hair around and didn't fix it. Didn't need to look clean. I was done trying to appear smaller just to keep things calm. The weight settled in, not the bad kind. Not guilt or shame or whatever else I used to carry in silence. This was something heavier, but solid, rooted, real. I thought about every whisper I'd ever heard. The ones that stuck when I was younger. She's too rough, too loud, trucker trash. I used to duck my head when I walked past the diner windows. Used to change out of my work boots before running errands, like dignity came with soft soles. But now I kept thinking of Dale's voice, firm and clear in the middle of Main Street. She outranks the part of you that can't say you're proud. That one sentence snapped something loose in me. Before we wrap up, drop a comment with where you're listening from. We're glad you're here. The town had finally seen me, not just tolerated me, seen me. Not for what I used to be, not for who raised me, but for what I'd built on my own terms, mile by mile. Respect isn't loud, it's not medals or speeches. It's folding chairs after everyone's gone home, It's speaking up when silence is easier. It's standing next to someone and letting truth do the work. I don't know if my dad and I will ever be close. We might go right back to talking weather and tires and nothing deeper. But the wall he built around me cracked open that day, and I don't need it torn down all at once. The silence is broken. That's enough. If you're carrying someone else's echo, let it die. Their pride isn't yours to haul. You want to stand steady? Stand on your own name, and don't move.